All right. Look at that. It's Thursday night, and you know what that means. Time for the fastest hour on the internet. I say that every week, and every week it turns out to be true. I swear last week it was like 16 minutes and 25 seconds.
It
But
went
it was
by
really a
really
full
fast.
hour.
Flew by. Yeah.
So, unfortunately, it is the fastest hour on the internet, but fortunately, you get to spend it with us. And tonight, nailing this whole thing down and being the only adult in the room, one of my East Coast compatriots, EJ. How you doing, EJ?
Hi, doing all right. How are you, Rob?
I am living the dream. Nightmares qualify. They both happen when you're asleep. Basically today here in Western New York, it was 91 degrees, which we very rarely get. And then we actually had tornado warnings and golf ball size hail in parts of our region. And where I live, we got none of it. I was like, there's like the TV's going bam, 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 and your phone's going off. Everything's happening. I was like, yeah, it's a little windy and sunny.
Wow. Wow.
Nothing. So whatever.
Crazy.
So
yeah. It was hot and balmy here too in North Carolina. So yeah, just humidity out the ass.
It's that whole El Nino or La Nina.
I can't imagine in Vegas.
Well, yeah, in
Vegas, I don't even want to talk about
110 or so,
Yeah, but it's a dry heat.
Exactly. It's a dry heat. You don't even notice.
Yeah.
As your skin is melting off your skull.
Exactly. It looks like a scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark when you go out.
Exactly.
It's I'm gonna keep pushing like this, just kind of keep it.
Just to readjust.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, joining us tonight from Las Vegas, as they mentioned, are Megan and Anthony, and they have the website Mayhem in the Desert. And they're going to touch on some great stories tonight. Some, I guess there's a little John Wayne Gacy story tonight. There's, the story that I think is making a few gangsters out in the desert area a little nervous, where the bodies are showing up at the bottom of Lake Mead. And all of a sudden, a bunch of guys named Nunzio are getting scared. I don't know. I don't understand. They're also going to touch on some other Vegas stuff. So if you have questions for them, a la Vegas, jump on in the chat. So how you guys doing tonight?
Doing great. I'm a little, don't mind my voice. I'm a little under the weather, and it's even more annoying than usual, but we will get through this. Anthony.
I am doing all right. My voice is sound, so that's good.
That's good.
But I feel bad for Megan.
So I want to talk about. I met these two individuals at CrimeCon this year, and
that's where I was going.
And it was like Megan and I just clicked. We just totally had this camaraderie from the beginning, and started talking about their website and my interest in crime. And then of course I got to meet Anthony the next day, and these guys are just really cool. They've got a really interesting website, Mayhem in the Desert. And so maybe you guys can talk about what inspired the website, when you started it. How did that get going?
Yeah.
Well, let's do our news before we jump into this, so we don't split everything up.
We forgot about my really exciting story.
You're fine. I don't want to get them in the middle of a story and then have to come back.
Right.
As I said, we have a couple of news stories that we run through every week, and let's get ready. So as usual, we have a couple stories for you that you didn't know you needed to know, but when you hear them, you're going to be like, hey, I guess I did need to know that. And now you do. So coming to us tonight first, I believe there's a spud in the news, right, EJ?
There is. Coming out of Colorado, there is a woman who has kept a smiling potato in her freezer for 5 years because it looked friendly. So apparently this
I love the look on your face, Megan.
I'm surprised
Your
it's
eyes
Colorado.
just rolled.
Yeah.
It sounded like through my headphones, I heard like a Friday night in a bowling alley. That's how loud your eyes just rolled.
Very nice, very nice. So apparently, this individual was making hash browns in 2017 and could not bring herself to use this potato in the hash browns because it had eyeballs and a mouth. And apparently, she couldn't bring herself to get rid of it, so she put it in the freezer. And then she decided to take it out, and she's dressing it up now. She's putting it in a reclining chair, sitting at the dinner table. She has it watching TV with her. So this potato has taken on a whole new life beyond what it should have been. And I find this article interesting because my brother actually gave me a potato for Christmas one year. So I don't know if you guys can see that's the potato he gave me.
I mean, it's a fine potato.
I've never been gifted a potato by my brother.
No, I did not save it. I did not put clothes on it or anything like that. But yes, so I feel like I really connected with this individual, with this woman in Colorado.
What year did weed become legal in Colorado?
What? Weed?
What year did weed become legal in Colorado? Was it?
It's been a minute now.
I was saying,
Yeah.
Sounds like it's timing up pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just saying. I mean,
Yeah.
Some survival secrets for potatoes. Just try to look, have some eyes,
Look cute.
right,
people won't eat you.
but then you gotta live in a
Anthropomorphize.
freezer.
Yeah,
I don't know.
exactly.
I
Put it
don't
in the
know.
freezer. Put some clothes on it.
And
Who does
you know,
that?
everybody's favorite cryptid is the headline of news story number 2.
Yep.
News story number 2 comes to us from Florida. Go figure. Florida man.
Yep.
The world's second favorite cryptid, right behind Bigfoot. This particular gentleman was arrested in Flagler County, Jacksonville. He stole a street sweeper and took it on a joyride. How long could that chase have lasted? Like, those things only go like 1.5 miles an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he could have had it in 5th gear floored, and that thing is like,
Yeah. Exactly.
But apparently what happened was he jumped out of the street sweeper and hid in a ditch for 3 hours. And the police found him because a concerned resident said that a man covered in mud was walking up through his backyard. And I guess there's really not any way that you're going to describe that one away. Well, it rained mud. I don't know. But at what point in time do you decide that stealing a street sweeper is a good idea? I don't know.
Gotta wonder what the end game was there.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm kind of thinking
I mean,
there
like,
was no end game.
well, maybe his street was really dirty, and he was just trying to be a good Samaritan, and he was going to clean up his street.
I think you've got the defense all lined out for him.
It's Florida.
He's a lawyer.
That's right. That's right.
Anything can be a defense in Florida. We had a story a week or 2 ago where the guy, some truck driver, ripped the awning off a public supermarket, crashed into a pickup truck, drove it 200, pushed the pickup truck 100 feet to the parking lot. And when the cops asked him if he was okay, if he had been drinking or anything like that, he looked at the cop deadpan and so.
What did he tell him?
Did we freeze?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we got
Yeah, I
cut
thought it
out a
was, yeah.
second. And another second or 2.
Rob,
Yeah, I'm here. Hello.
you're freezing
Did
up
we
a
lose
little bit. I'm
everybody?
not sure what happened there.
Uh-oh, sorry. All right, well, before we have any more technical issues, let's jump into the story tonight. So, again, we've got Megan and Anthony from Mayhem in the Desert. We'll give you a chance to plug your website so everybody knows where to find it.
For sure.
we definitely want to know that. And then let's get into the stories. EJ, take it away.
Okay. So let's start that over again. So what inspired the website? What got you guys started? Why did you decide to start writing about crime in Las Vegas?
Well, the idea actually started in 2017. We kind of had this idea that we wanted to write some
You
stories
found a
about Las
potato
Vegas.
that looked like a
In
burglar.
2017. Right?
Exactly. My brother gifted me a potato. No. And we kind of sat on it for a few years. Anthony put together a few stories, and come 2019, and we decide this is the time, now or never. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, and then we launched it in October of 2019, and it was the launch coincided with Nevada Day, which is a holiday here in Las Vegas, but it also always falls on Halloween. So it was a nice little overlap. But Megan and I are both born and raised here, and so we thought, and we love true crime. So we figured it was a good way to tell stories about the city and do it through telling the crimes that have happened here.
And since we're native to Las Vegas, both of us know a lot of stories that have been floating around. So we had to do a lot of looking up to see if some of these were actually real stories. And when I was a kid, my mom told me this horror story that you can't go anywhere alone because there are little girls that are found on the side of the street with no arms and no legs. So I'm an adult now. I'm like, you know what? Let me look that up. Did that ever really happen?
Yeah.
It did. I mean, she exaggerated a little, I think, but she apparently
Wow.
Yeah, well, this girl was abducted in the 70s or 80s.
Yeah.
And she was assaulted. The attacker cut off, I think, her arms.
Yeah.
And then left her in the desert for dead. She managed to crawl her way back to help, survived, and her attacker went to prison. But yeah, we were surprised to learn that wasn't just
I thought my mom was just trying to scare me because she did that a lot. But no, it was true. Wow. And after looking up some of these stories, it's like, wait a minute, this is all true, and nobody really knows about these stories. And there's no real true crime anything about Vegas. There is a little bit more now, I will say that. But it's just all these stories that locals know and no one else. Everyone thinks that Las Vegas is a strip, and we are here to tell you that it is not just the strip.
Well, it's because people are a little hesitant about true crime in Vegas because not
I say no more, so no more.
Well, you know what I'm saying? I grew up in North Jersey, so a couple of these guys could come around and just say, "Hey, I hear you telling stories. That's cool."
Yeah.
Well, that's something we're scared of, actually.
And we actually did have a convicted killer reach out to us at least once
that we had wrote about.
Yeah.
Which one?
His name was Ron Fain, and he was convicted back in the early 80s for killing a guy by the name of Bobby Thomas. But he got roped into this wild story that only recently got solved. In 1979, there was a high schooler, Kim Bryant, that was just waiting at a Dairy Queen across the street from Western High School, broad daylight, like 10 a.m., and she gets forced into a car. No one identifies the suspect. They sadly find her body on the outskirts of town. And there's all these different people that the police think it is. There was a serial killer operating in town at the time, Stephen Peter Morin, and he abducted and killed 2 women in broad daylight. So they thought it might be him. They thought that this Ron Fain may have actually killed the murderer of Kim Bryant. But it turned out through genetic testing last year, it was some guy that was on no one's radar, just a contractor, living and working here in the city that had been responsible for the murder. But this Fain reached out to us, and
Sorry, I'm like, I want to tell this part.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we went to CrimeCon, we were approached by Othram Labs. And very, very friendly. They're doing great work out in Houston. And it turns out that they solved last year the Kim Bryant case after 30 years or so.
Yeah.
And what they told us is that our story that we wrote had more information than anywhere that they could find. So they actually used our article to help solve the case. I mean, that we just kind of laid things out where we were. Yeah, that gave us a huge ego boost. So I'm sorry. But definitely great people doing work out there.
That's awesome. Yeah. And Anthony, you're an attorney.
Yeah.
So are you criminal or civil?
Civil for the most part. Yeah.
Okay. But you have an attorney's point of view when you're going into writing these articles and these stories.
Yeah, a little bit. And, you know, I try to separate that type of writing from, you know, the boring legal writing.
Right.
But a real benefit is, you know, we have pretty easy access to the court records from back in the day. So we'll look at the actual transcripts from these criminal proceedings, you know, when people are convicted or the grand jury testimony, and get a lot of additional background that's nowhere else for our stories there.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. And Megan, you're an artist. Does that affect how you see the world and of crime?
I don't know if it's that, but something helps me see differently. I try to do some art when I can. And I've just always had an interest. Cool.
Cool.
Well, and you've loved true crime since when? Like teenager? Yeah.
Teenage. Yeah.
Well, how did you guys get to the point where you looked at each other and said, Mayhem in the desert? How did it get to that point?
We had to try a few names at first, but it was always based around Mayhem.
Yeah. So
have you guys known each other a long time?
Oh,
well, okay.
You go.
I'm sorry. I'm like, let me hog the mic. So we actually went to high school together, and we dated in high school. You know, summer happened. We didn't talk to each other after that. And then 15 years. Okay, maybe not 15. I'm not that. Let's say 5 years. 5 years later, we happened to meet each other on a dating website.
Wow.
And neither of us knew who each other were. I mean, and it finally got to that point. I'm like, you know what? Are you Anthony Smith? You know, and he's like, are you Megan Madden? And we went out on a date. And here we are 7 years later, married and happy.
Oh. Great story. And you already have the true crime in common.
Right.
So, and so this was kind of like a passion of Megan's or yours too, Anthony.
I think both of us, yeah, because for me, I started reading true crime with Crime Library back in like the late 90s. That place was great, and I love that it was in-depth articles, and so I think we tried to recreate that a little bit.
Yeah,
nice.
So I guess, you know, it's one of those things that, like, you know, a city like Las Vegas has to have like its own little, if you will, atmosphere, universe, sphere of Vegas, I guess, Vegasness. I mean, you know, where else can you get, you know, 2,200 Elvis impersonators?
Yeah.
You know, one from every country on the planet. Skydiving Elvis, you know.
Elvi come in many forms.
Yes.
They do. I'm an Elvis nut. Okay. So, like, here, the weirdest thing, never owned a single one of his records. Never owned a single 45, a tape, nothing. I was fascinated by Elvis the man because he was such an odd human being. His OCD was almost crippling. And apparently he received, you know, he got, like, in Vegas, he was actually okay. That was like the one part of the world where he was okay.
Was
I
he
find
on
that
Elvis
amazing.
It had an opposite effect on Howard Hughes.
Yes. Well,
we actually eloped with Elvis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
The
if
real
you're gonna
Elvis?
elope, of course.
We got married in the custom of our people. So
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, we all know Elvis isn't dead.
no.
Is he? Do we know that?
No, yes, we do. We know he's
Do we?
not dead.
Okay. It's not the ghost of Elvis.
Las Vegas would be
Don't
a good
start-
place to hide if you're Elvis.
Don't start your skepticism
Let's
tonight.
start with
me.
the. You don't care for that?
I can mute you. I have the button. I have the power.
We'll do it too. Well, I don't want us to go too far before we start talking about how serial killer John Wayne Gacy is connected to Las Vegas. Can you go into his history there? Because he's not from Vegas.
Oh.
No, he is not. But I would like to show you guys one thing before we get started.
Yeah.
I own
Is it an
this.
original?
I actually
No.
No.
He won't
Did
let
you
me
do
buy any more clown stuff though, so we're tapped out with this. And actually, I wore clown earrings.
Wow.
Just so we could discuss this. Anthony, I'll let you take the lead.
Well, yeah. So as far as we know, before John Wayne Gacy killed his first victim, he was trying to escape his father, and he found his way to Las Vegas, like a lot of people do. And he found a profession that apparently suited him well, which was at Palm Mortuary, a local funeral parlor near downtown Las Vegas. He already was a creepy fellow to his supervisor and everyone that worked at the mortuary. In fact, he lived there too. Apparently there were some quarters there. Whatever, plenty of strange folks work in, the funeral directing business, where things
In
got a
every
little
field.
weird. I guess where things got a little weird. Oh, good.
There's
it got
weirdos
weird,
everywhere.
though, because his boss started to get word that John Wayne Gacy was folding and taking extra special care of the clothes and dressing the corpses in his care, which apparently was beyond his job duties. And the straw that broke the camel's back was he was found sleeping in a coffin with a teenage boy, and he was nixed from that point.
Yeah, it's pretty much from this point at the mortuary.
Mhm.
That's when this all kind of started. He's like, I like how that guy looks. I like it a lot. I'm gonna cuddle him. I'm gonna wear his clothes. And yeah, that's very creepy to me. And on a side note, we were driving by Palm Mortuary, and we were lucky enough to catch the show of the cremation as the ashes flew into the air through the chimney. It was a very magical moment.
Well, you should have seen us. We were looking and we're saying, "Oh, that's weird. That's
Like, there's a fire.
strange. Yeah, is there a fire or something?" We're like, "Oh, that's the mortuary." And then pretty quickly that starts to click.
Did it smell like anything?
We didn't roll down
don't
the
go
window.
there.
I don't need to know that. I've heard enough
Is that a
about
weird
it.
question?
Yeah.
A mystery we'll never know the answer to.
Oh, it's a real shame.
I know it's Night Terrors Radio, but really? That's where we
I'm
went?
keeping it real, Rob. I'm keeping it real.
I'm muting you.
So
No, I
I
mean,
think
we've had this discussion before about the weird shit that, like, we talked about Arthur Shawcross when he did his interview and trying to shock the reporter. He told the reporter that human flesh tasted just like roast pork.
it probably does.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, it may.
the broken
Your
brains
flesh,
of these
like,
killers. I mean,
animals.
when we talked to Rod Sadler, a week or 2 weeks ago, the guy was hit. Don Miller just broken upstairs. I mean, none of the wires connecting.
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me, but I guess what gets me though is like when you look at Gacy's connection to Las Vegas, and you say that was kind of like the jumping off point. You kind of got to wonder what got there had to have been something. There was something that happened in Vegas, maybe, that just started that, train going down that track. I know he had a rough time with his dad. He did not necessarily have the greatest, bringing up, but it seems as though that time in Vegas is what kind of, set him off.
Well, that's kind of what we wonder.
Yeah, if you think about it, that was the first time he was away from home, was it not? And he had not dealt with his feelings towards other men,
No.
And so this was his first experience. And if you are achieving orgasm with a dead body, nobody's judging you. Nobody is, looking at you and laughing.
Really?
Except maybe the people you work with.
So I might be judging him.
Well, yeah.
Well, I did find that very interesting that it wasn't until he actually started working with the bodies that all of this came out.
Mm-hmm.
It hit a trigger, or like you said, we don't really know why, but it was something about him having all of that time alone with the bodies, and just as he learns to do makeup and other things like that, all of the sudden he just gets extremely attracted to one of the young boys in a coffin. He climbs in the coffin with him, he sleeps and does other things sometimes. Not at first.
Right.
But I would love to know the trigger.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, something was percolating, and it seems to be the case that first exposure to, to his type, to his victim profile of those teenage boys, that just, I don't know, it was the final, combination that just set off the explosion. And, then you found out the result of that in his crawl space.
Yeah.
So the story that kind of got me interested in your area, and then that ultimately led to you guys coming on, was the fact that Lake Mead is now at historic low levels, and they're starting to find some pretty interesting things in Lake Mead. And I guess that's, EJ, said, I met some folks at the Crime Con, and they have this thing, and they were working on that. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've found out about Lake Mead?
Oh, sure. It's unfortunately we don't have too much more other than right at the beginning of May, they found a barrel with skeletal remains in it. So they haven't identified who the victim was, but especially with the kind of genetic techniques that we were seeing from Othram Labs, they don't need that much DNA to make the identification.
Is it 100?
Yeah, it was something like 100
Very
cells.
low, yeah.
But what they have been able to find is, I guess, the skeletal remains still had some clothing items, and they traced the clothing as a type being sold in Kmart in the mid to late 70s. So they're pretty sure that the victim dates from that time period, from mid 70s to maybe early 80s. And you are looking right at the height of the mob days. I mean, it's right out of the movie Casino at that time. Tony Spilotro was just wreaking havoc across town.
R.I.P. Yes, Tony Spilotro has passed away. I asked Anthony if I could start calling him Aunt. He wasn't really into it.
No.
But they're kind of finding all kinds of stuff, because everyone is going out there and trying to get their 15 minutes of fame. And someone found, I believe they were goat remains, or sheep remains, and people touched them and they're like, hey, we found these. It's like, okay, great, leave them there. But they found another barrel, and I believe that barrel was empty.
They did. They found another empty barrel, and then they found a skeleton about a week after the body in a barrel, but no ID on that one.
No. So I'm thinking the further we go, I think they may finally find Jimmy Hoffa. That is my prediction. I think he might be out in that lake just waiting to pop up and say hello. I don't know.
I thought he was under the eye in the end zone at Giant Stadium. Growing up in North Jersey, that was the rumor we always heard, that he's buried in the end zone under the eye in Giants. And
I've heard of that one too. Yeah.
Oh, he could be anywhere. I mean, we don't know.
he's with Elvis and Bigfoot.
Exactly.
Sure.
They're all hanging out together. somewhere.
Bigfoot's still
Yeah.
using a 1.2 megapixel camera.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Oh, man.
like now you kind of touched on a little bit, but there, I mean, I did know, the Vegas has a kind of sordid crime history with the various types of families, because it has gone through the Italians, it's gone through, there's some Russian activity out there, there's been other family opportunities out there. Is Lake Mead known to be like a spot where, take somebody to hide them, or is it, just out in the desert, out in the middle of nowhere?
Not quite in the middle of nowhere. And I say that because a lot of people go to Lake Mead. So it's not that far out. But
yeah, I mean, the kind of tagline for Mayhem in the Desert is "It's a big desert out there." So I think Lake Mead is probably just part of that. Now, organized crime was notorious for disposing of bodies out in the desert, or apparently at Lake Mead, as we're learning. But you see plenty of other pretty twisted crimes where the victims end up out in the desert.
Yeah.
In fact, one that we wrote about recently, there's a pretty notorious strip club in town called the Crazy Horse 2. And the owner of it back in the early 1980s had strong links to the Genovese crime family. Well, he was going to a business meeting one day and never came home. And then about a month after that, they found his head out in the desert, but never found the body or any suspects.
Of course.
It was an accident.
It could have been. Heads go missing all the time.
Right. It just, he sneezed real hard. You don't know. Like I said, I grew up in North Jersey. You don't know it.
Now, I actually have a story that we are working on. And it's about a teenager that was found in the desert. No head, body, different location. It's very, very graphic. So I don't know if right now is the time for it, but
why not?
Oh, well, okay.
Give us a few details anyway.
I'll just tell it very quickly. Basically, a group of kids from Green Valley High School got together and formed what they thought was their own mafia or mob. And what do you do? What's the first thing you do when you start a mob? You make a hit list, obviously.
Yeah.
So, they decided they didn't like one of their friends anymore. And they tried a few ways to kill him over the counter, but none of it worked. So they decided one night that they were going to take him out to the desert and kill him. Well, they messed up. They went out prior to taking the guy with them, and they dug a really deep hole. Now, when they took the guy back out into the desert, they could not find the hole they made again. So he was put in a shallow grave, but he was tased, beaten. They pulled out all his teeth while he was alive. Very, very sad. But they buried the body parts in two different places. So there were some people that were out going four-wheeling in the desert, and they come across it. So how that ties back to me is the guy who killed him told me that he was probably out in the desert somewhere. So I basically had to testify in court against this super creepy guy who I was on his list of people to be killed. So that's some of the details. Yeah. Some of the details. I need to see if I can find anyone that was still involved in this. That would really help my memory. But that is something that will be coming eventually. Anthony has his own too that's kind of touching to him.
Now, how long ago was this?
Oh man,
yeah.
I was about 18, 19.
Yeah, so that
So
was,
like
what,
5 years ago.
Yeah, 5 years ago,
exactly,
basically.
5 years,
Yeah, 5 years ago. Not a day over 30.
And it was kind of crazy because I went looking through the case and we actually found Megan's testimony. So that brought back a lot of
it
memories.
was to read. I never read everyone's testimony, and to read it all, it was just so. It was like, ooh, because you're a kid, you're testifying in this room full of people with a murderer, 3 feet away from you. It's scary, and I wasn't as extroverted then, so yeah.
Did you remember like the questions and your answers, or was reading it like oh my god, I don't remember that?
No, I remembered pretty much most of what I said, but to see what some of his friends and other people that had to testify against him, there was just more and even more creepy details that would come out.
Well, and then we find out they were just super obsessed with Casino, the movie.
Oh yeah, they were obsessed with Casino. And so he wanted to live his life out like Casino. And I'm sorry, but you're a teenager in high school.
And also, most mobsters don't exactly have the longest shelf life.
Yeah, especially when you kind of tell who you are to everyone.
Yeah.
So there's a lot in there.
And he told you he was.
It's like rule number one of Fight Club. You don't tell anybody.
Exactly.
Well, he
tells you he'd done it.
He didn't quite say that. He said, with another friend who helped him, he said that he is most likely in the desert.
Well, and wasn't it crazy because they were searching for the missing kid who was ultimately murdered, and they asked the actual killers, and they just, didn't they go to the mother's house or something? Yeah.
Yeah, they all lived in the same neighborhood. And what they ended up doing was going to the mother and saying, oh my gosh, what can we do to help you? How can we help? And they put flyers all over the neighborhood. They were so supportive of the family. So it was just, and I tell you what, I saw it on the news one morning. And I'm thinking, I'm like, this is really similar to what I thought happened. I get on the phone with my friend's aunt and she says, I'm sorry, but yes, that is what happened. And I was against the wall. And I remember I just kind of slinked down the wall till I was sitting down. It'll be an interesting one whenever I finally get it out.
Yeah. Wow.
Do you find that you have like, I don't know, I don't PTSD is not maybe the right thing. Do you find that you have like some anxietal moments because of that? That remembering and seeing all that?
When I read over anything again, it did. It was a little off-putting. I think I got the chills. But other than that, I hate to say, but it was a long time ago, and I've seen worse since then. So it's just kind of.
And you're able to compartmentalize.
Exactly.
Because we've asked EJ the same question, with her reaching button and all that, and just having to look at that kind of a thing, and then being able to compartmentalize it has got to be, it must be your superpower at this point. Like you said, you've seen so much worse since then. So, and Anthony, now you have one that you wanted to tell us about, right?
Yeah, well, it's mine's happened when I was about 14 or 15, and very sad. Everyone, I think remembers the shooting that we had at the Mandalay Bay back in 2017 at the concert. But there about 15. about 15, 20 years before that, there's an article we're writing about the forgotten Vegas mass shooting. And so there was a Albertsons supermarket about a block from the house I grew up in as a kid. And in 1999, so when I was just a teenager, this guy that lived on the other side from where I grew up, he snapped. He just early one morning, he made the walk from his house to that Albertsons with a shotgun. He ended up murdering 4 people there, and then had a standoff with the police before he finally surrendered. But now, his case is still in the news because he's on death row. And so, there's a lot of legal battles about, him fighting that, and Nevada trying to import a bunch of, drugs to carry out the execution and stuff. So, so that was a pretty chilling one.
I guess I don't understand.
Yeah, just
I was gonna say, I guess I don't understand. If you get into a shootout with the police and surrender, what point where's the option for appeal? They kind of know where and when. It's
attorney. Why don't you answer that, attorney?
Yeah.
Well, it's that gets as an attorney, it's sort of nuanced. No, I think what the debate comes down to, Nevada still has a death penalty, but they haven't used it in quite some time. And so I guess the issue and what all the legal battles are about right now is there are companies that make the drugs that are used for lethal injection, but they won't ship them to a lot of states. And so Nevada can't get any drugs to carry out the execution. So they've started, which is sort of weird, concocting their own sort of brew for it. And then that's causing all these claims about, is that cruel and unusual punishment to use these chemicals that have never been tested before?
Yeah.
This guy could serve a purpose. He
What did you say?
To make sure it's okay for us. He could serve a purpose. He could make sure it's okay for everybody else.
Yeah, an example.
I suppose so.
Yeah, so and that's a case we wanted to shed a little more light on, just because of the personal impact and stuff with it. But yeah, there's and actually Megan, her family has a tie to a really famous but gangster in town, but a lot of people don't know. You all familiar with Benny Binion?
I've heard the name. Yeah.
The horseshoe, Binions.
Yep.
Your dad.
I didn't know he was. I didn't know how connected he was.
Oh, he was connected.
I was always under the impression that he was like he was kind of connected, but like somewhere down one of the branches, not up the center of the tree.
He's the center of the tree.
Yeah, he's because a lot of folks always, which is true, think about the mafia and La Cosa Nostra for organized crime in Vegas, but we had a whole other category of gangster in town during the heyday, the cowboy gangster. And that's really what Benny Binion was. He ran the gambling rackets in Dallas before he moved here and opened the Horseshoe.
Yeah, my father worked for him actually until he passed, I think, and they changed the name. And I have a lot of family that works in the casino industry because, there's a lot of places. And my family always says that the casinos in Las Vegas was ran better under the mob. I don't know. I haven't experienced, but I do find that very interesting. And basically, I think it was, the mob got things done. They didn't pussyfoot around anything. They're like, get that guy, get that guy. Kind of like that.
One of the stories we wrote about Benny is, everyone knows Ted Binion because he had the famous trial. Yeah. So, when Ted was younger in the 60s, he was good friends with the son of this cab driver, Marvin Shumati. So this cab driver, Shumati, got the bright idea that, I'll just kidnap Ted Binion with some of my buddies that I know at the bar, and we'll hold him ransom, and I'll get a good payday from Benny Binion, and that'll be that. One of the friends at the bar had a brain and decided to tip off Benny Binion. One day, Shumati was leaving that bar he would always go to, He got picked up by unknown individuals working for Binion, and they ultimately found his body shot to death out in the desert by Sunrise Mountain. And then just about 2 weeks ago, we got an email from Shumati's granddaughter who said, this was the most detailed info they found about, this part of their family history. And apparently the rumor in their family was that the shotgun used to kill Shumati hung in the basement at Binion's Horseshoe Casino as a memento.
Wow.
We give fun little, sometimes people write to us, not every story at all, but they'll reach out and say, oh, hey, I knew so-and-so. If you ever want to hear a story about I can come talk to you. And I find that very interesting that people do want to reach out and that they do want to share their stories and that they choose to do it through us, because we who was the serial killer that reached out? We had a serial killer that we wrote about, and he read our article.
Oh, that was Fane.
Fane?
Yeah, the from the Kim Bryant one.
Okay, from the Kim Bryant case we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And he wrote us and he said that the news articles were wrong. That's not what happened at all. And so we said, well, hey, if you want, we will give you your chance to correct any information. Right? That we said, go ahead and write to us and we'll post it and it'll be good. And he thanked us, and I don't believe we heard from him again.
No.
But it's a little things like that makes you want to push further into it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. On my website, I have actually heard from one of the survivors because she didn't like what one of the other survivors said. So I actually was able to get 2 of the survivors in my book because one of them wanted to set the record straight. She didn't agree with what the other person said. So yeah, it's fascinating.
Which I was going to say everyone should check out. Can you just kind of spot yourself? Tell yourself.
On my bunny.
We already did a show on EJ.
Yeah, let's spotlight me.
Give yourself a shout out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where's my spotlight?
Well, yeah.
I should do it every episode, Rob.
Huh?
Let's feature me every episode.
That's true.
Yeah. Thank
You're
you for
the star.
But actually, your website, Mayhem in the Desert, is really interesting. I read the story about Frank and Bridget Waters, the World War II bride that her husband, American husband, didn't want to stay married, and she killed him. That was fascinating. And I love that you
gotta do what you gotta do.
These original newspaper clippings, and but you've added your own insight into it. The website's really good.
Well, thank
you so much.
Yeah, we try to make a little bit of the feel of the old kind of pulpy true crime look.
Yes.
Do you get into
Rob,
any
did you get
of
a chance to see it?
I did.
Yeah.
I did not get a chance to do a deep dive because I got hung up on which I was reading. I think it was the serial killer one that you were saying that I'd have to go back and look. Today was a jumble, but I did not notice. And what I wanted to check out was, do you get into any of the fantasized stories of Vegas crime? Do you touch on any of the the glitz and glamour parts of Vegas crime?
Well, it's interesting. I think we've got something up your alley. One of the stories we're working on, one of the first guys to popularize Elvis impersonation in Las Vegas. I think his name was last name was McKay. I think it was Don McKay. But one day, in the early 90s, he arrived home with his girlfriend, who had been a former Miss Nevada, and some unknown individual or individuals shot them both execution style. Nothing stolen, and they've still never solved that case. But a very Vegas story. One of the theories the police had is that it related to a contract over who got to plant palm trees in the road lining the strip.
Yes. That's what we got.
A little petty.
Another one that you may be interested in is our article about Naked City.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's it's about a young boy who was murdered, but it talks about Las Vegas in the about 60s.
Yeah, 50s and 60s.
Yeah, 50s and 60s. And there's this part of Las Vegas. I don't know if you've heard of the formerly the Stratosphere, but there was an area behind there where showgirls used to live, and it was called Naked City because they suntanned in the nude. And for this part of town is very interesting to many a people because it has to do a little bit with Vegas history. You spring in a little bit of the showgirls and the shows on the Strip, and unfortunately, you bring up a sad story. But
yeah, and it's now one of the most high crime neighborhoods in the city. But yeah, that history, people are just fascinated by it.
Well, it's that, it's the, you hear about like Bugsy Siegel and, the beginnings of Vegas and the first shovelfuls of dirt and, all that. So there's that glitz glam, aspect to it, but there's a hard line in the sand. That glitz glam isn't what really goes on. You have you see the stories like Goodfellas or Casino and all that. So much of that stuff happens behind the scene. No one's where no one knows. Someone didn't come out like if Henry Hill didn't say, all right, I'll go States and rat. None of that would have ever come out. Nobody would have known any of those things. And I think that's where we find that fascination in Vegas is the fact that we know it's there. That the stories have to be there. That somewhere along the line, somebody crossed somebody. Sinatra and, the Rat Pack alone had to have some pretty amazing connections and things out there, because when you read the individual biographies of all of those gentlemen, the stories of what went on, how did they get away with half the stuff that went on? And
I think because of who they were, honestly.
Well, I can give you one hint is one of my favorite photos of Frank Sinatra is with him and Carlo Gambino, the crime boss. So yes, some powerful friends smoothed the way.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. There's that glitz, there's that glamour, and I think that's what Carlo wanted. I think he wanted that picture more than Frank did.
Oh yeah.
Oh, definitely.
And Frank doesn't look the most comfortable in that photo.
No.
But when somebody like Carlo Gambino says, "Take a picture with me," you don't say no. You say, "What would you like me to wear?"
Exactly. Yeah.
And so you have this that's the fascinating part of Vegas. It's there. There's these little nuggets. There's these little stories, and I'm really looking forward to the story that you were just saying, Megan, about that little kind of friend that friends that wanted to be the mob, that because those are like those little weird stories that only in Vegas. It's that microcosm, like I said, that little universe, that sphere. So that was where my head was coming from on that glitz and glam question, is just because it's there. It's when you pull back the covers, what are you going to find?
Well, and it seems to strike a nerve. I mean, just the way that the body in the barrel at Lake Mead got such huge national attention. People still make that association with Vegas, and they're still just eager to find out more info about that hidden history.
Yeah,
definitely.
So much money changes hands in that city.
Oh,
yeah.
And
And that's not just the casinos.
no. There's money changing hands on multiple levels.
Oh,
Yeah.
And what's costing you $250 of that is going to another guy that's getting $250 from 5 other guys.
Mm-hmm.
That's getting $1.75 from 10 other guys or girls or people. I'm sorry. And so that's where that fascination comes in. It's the larger than life American dream. You know, it's the, for me on the East Coast and growing up New York City, it was Times Square, the Deuce. You know, it's cleaned up now. It's Disneyfied. But you can still find those old timers that remember Times Square from like the late 60s, early 70s on up into the 80s, where, you know, it wasn't exactly the nicest place. It wasn't where you walk your family.
Crime was rampant. Everywhere you look, crime.
Absolutely.
Taxi
Absolutely.
driver vibe, yeah.
So I want to ask just one more thing before we wrap things up. I do want to ask you about what you guys are working on now, moving forward. You have something in the work, from what I understand.
You can go and then.
Oh,
I was like, you go and then I'll tell you something.
Yeah, no, we're working on putting together our stories into a podcast. So yeah, we've already started converting them into that. So hopefully in the next few months, we'll have some of our first episodes out.
Yeah, really looking forward to that. And also another venue that we're looking into is some of the ghost stories in Las Vegas. Of course, you know, we know a bunch of little ones. There are some larger ones that involve some of the bigger hotels and things like that. And we were looking some of these ghost stories. Sorry, I don't know. You can't see all my quotes. You can't see all my finger movements. Sorry. They help a lot. Anyways, there was a young boy that was killed by a drunk driver at a park. And supposedly at midnight, he pops up on the swings and his eyes will go red and he turns into a demon. So we look into that. It is true that he was killed by a drunk driver there. So it would be fun, I think, for us to go and check it out. But we have a lot of that too. So we love writing about true crime, but some of these stories are just fascinating. And we feel that it's all part of Vegas and something that we would like to share with the rest of the world.
And it helps we love horror. So.
Yeah, it does help. It does help we like horror. How many people have this? Wait.
I don't have it.
Well, how many people have this?
I can't see that, Rob.
Yeah, I don't.
It's the Monster Squad. Do you remember Monster Squad, that late 80s movie?
Yeah.
I have 2. Not a lot of people. It's that weird, like, I'm into that weird cult horror stuff.
One of my favorites is Creature from the Black Lagoon. We have some posters for that. Did
you know that in the original Forrest Gump, in the novel Forrest Gump, written by Winston Groom, Forrest was the creature from the Black Lagoon?
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
That's crazy.
Wow. I had no clue.
Yeah, it's in the novel. It never made the book, or never made the movie.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't even know it was a novel.
I think I'd heard that.
He's like, I
never
know.
read it.
It's very hard to read because Forrest's lines are written the way Forrest speaks. So it takes a chapter or two to get used to, like, sandwich being sandwich. Or, you know, like when someone called him a dumb son of a bitch, and it's DUMSUMMABICH. So it's very, your brain goes, wait a minute, for the first chapter or two, and then you can get through it. But yes, he was the creature from the Black Lagoon in the novel.
Oh wow!
I like that.
I'm full of stupid facts.
Hey, I like that's pretty much all I keep in here. I don't have room for much else. So
song lyrics, movie quotes,
Just a lot of song lyrics.
Oh no.
I love to sing. I know a lot of lyrics.
She's a good singer.
So, well, listen, it's the fastest hour on the internet.
That went by so fast. I
Yeah.
was hot at first, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's taken a lot. It's not hot anymore.
It's I mean, we zipped through that hour.
Oh yeah.
Please let us know, here, we have it in our chat, but can you just give us your website, any links to any Facebook or Twitter or anything else like that where we can follow the upcoming stories, where we can get some news about the upcoming podcast, and where we can contact you to have you come back on.
Yeah.
Well, you can find our website, mayheminthedesert.com.
Mhm.
We are also on TikTok, Reddit, I believe. Reddit.
Yeah, Reddit.
Uh-huh.
Instagram. Yeah, we're all Mayhem in the Desert.
Mhm.
And then for Twitter, we're at Vegas True Crime.
Vegas True Crime on Twitter.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
We're
Anything
also
on Facebook?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same
Mayhem in the
handle.
Desert.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you guys coming on and putting up with my stupidity.
It was fun.
And,
It was a fun time.
Yeah. No, this
Yeah.
was I'm so glad we got the invitation.
Mhm.
I've watched your shows and I kind of answer you guys at home. So being able to respond in person it's pretty nice. It's pretty
Yes. So
Well,
excited to have had you here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you,
Coming.
EJ. You're like a little miracle worker.
Yes.
You bring wait.
Thank
See,
you.
I'm so confused. I can't even figure out where the camera is. I'm like,
I don't
just
know.
do this?
I don't know how to do that one.
Yeah.
Robin.
I can do this. Oh wait,
Yeah.
I'm missing a nail.
That works.
See, I've got this
Well,
one.
I'm
I
gonna
don't know if you
stop.
can see that.
Sure.
I can see that. Wait.
Yeah.
Can I? Okay, I'll stop. I'm gonna stop.
This hand is if I just want you to, be quiet. This hand is if I've really had enough.
Random.
But anyway, I really appreciate you guys coming on. I hope you had a good time. We had a good time. I am fascinated by any stories that you want to show my way. Even Elversnators will take it. So
We missed a little bit of that.
Nothing.
Yeah, missed that.
Oh, sorry. I just said anything any Elvis stories you got, send them my way. Even Elvis impersonators, I'll take
Well,
those too.
I'm gonna write that down, and we will. You're gonna
Yep.
get something. So
Quite a few Elvis stories.
Mhm.
And if you need some stuff on the paranormal, you can always reach out to me too. So, but
Oh,
all right, this has been
lovely.
Night Terrors Radio. I have a paranormal group that I've operated since 2002. I've been investigating the paranormal since 2000. So this has been Night Terrors Radio, the fastest hour on the internet. Next Thursday, we have the return of the one, the only Ash Hamilton.
Yep.
Look at that. Daddy comes home next week. Wasn't that like 8 months ago that he went out for a couple of scratchers and a cup of coffee? Haven't heard from him since.
Never came back.
Never came back, that bastard.
No.
But so next week, apparently he's run out of whatever money he won on the scratchers he bought.
Gotta come back.
He'll be back running the show, so it'll go a little bit smoother. I did my best while you were gone, Dad. But thanks again, Anthony, Megan. Thank you so much for being on with us. Do you have a minute
Thank
for us
you.
off the air?
Hang out after.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Next Thursday.